Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you about this really unique and otherworldly film. Um, Maybe you can just kick off with a brief introduction to the Wanting Mare. You know, for people who don't know anything about it, how do you even begin to describe what they're going to watch?
Wow. The Wanting Mare is a film about people in a fictional place called Withrin, and it centers around a dream that's passed through different generations of women in this place. And Withrin is a place that is in a constant heat, and there's a ship that comes once a year to trap and take wild horses to somewhere else across the sea. And for those with a ticket, which are very, very hard to get, you could get aboard this transport ship to leave Withrin. So it sort of follows essentially two generations of women in this place. And yeah, yeah, that's my best explanation of it most of the time.
And it's your debut film. So, you know, what made you decide that this was the story that you wanted to tell? And where did the idea come from? Was it all your own head? Was it, something someone else had written? Where did it all begin?
It's a bunch of things. I mean, I think that certainly in terms of like a first film, it's at least in my experience, it's almost impossible to make something with a lot of choices in it. Most of it is an instinct of images and things, and you're making every movie that you've ever wanted to see all at once as your only choice. And I think it certainly is that. Though I can tell you a lot of my early, the clearest reference in it, which is something that just kind of still consumes my imagination, is Wuthering Heights, and this sort of generational, almost gothic, staining, haunting, consequence of a relationship in a place is it's my favorite piece of writing ever. And I'm constant. There's a wildness to it, obviously, that I'm not the first to clue into, but there's a strangeness, and you're in a place of dreams and doubles, and it's a very close, strange dream. And I wanted to make something like that, certainly in the place of a lot of people who are making first time fantasy films. There's so much expositional work to be done of here's the world and here are the rules and here's how magic works and all those sort of things. And I was just terrified of that. So I wanted to kind of take all of that out and just have it be like a dream, and you're just kind of thrown into this place. And my hope is every time you watch it, if you are able to watch it more than one time, or even if you see 10 minutes of it, you're like a dream. Each part is its own full little section. So, yeah. Yep.
And the thing that's most striking about it is this incredible world you create. So obviously that's a lot, using your skills of, in terms of effects and everything like that. But, what was the process of that like? And how were you able to bring to bear, other things you'd worked on to make, this world in your own
Right.
film?
It was a lot. I mean, we did not know what we were getting into. We just sort of began to make the movie as small as we could, and the movie was much larger than whatever we could do. And this is when oftentimes people invoke the help of visual effects. And I have been trying to teach myself things in the world of visual effects for years, though it nowhere near was at the point that it needed to do any of this. And that was the discovery. That's why the film kind of took about 5 years of figuring out how to do it. And between myself, Zach Schaefer, who's the gaffer and producer, David Ross, who's the director of photography, producer, Jared Condes, just basically the four of us did all the visual effects in just over years, learning how to do it. And all of the amazing surreal opportunities that have come since were in a sense long after this movie was, the Green Knight and these sort of things were so we were so lucky that they were those people had seen this movie, and we're like, what do you mean you're making a movie on blue screen by yourself? Like, this is not a normal process. So it's visual effects is like no every other part of filmmaking, where it's every time you're like, cool, I know just enough to be able to do this, then 0% of what you need to know to do the next stage, and it just never ends. So yeah, sometime today I'll be watching a visual effects tutorial, I promise you. What that means.
And what does the shooting of the film then look like in real time, in terms of the actual sets? Like, I believe you were kind of in, like warehouses and things like
Yeah.
that, so what was the process of actually shooting it? And how much of it was just, had to be added in afterwards?
Well, there were different stages. The first stage was the most terrified we were of visual effects, and the furthest we were from having any sort of process that was working. And as a result, we filmed the first 35 minutes of the movie probably has the most practical, as people would understand it, sequences in the film, and that was filmed in Nova Scotia. And that was basically 7 of us got in 2 cars and drove to Nova Scotia from New Jersey and Boston, and rented an Airbnb, which is that house we found on Airbnb, and filmed there for about 2 weeks and sort of moved around. And that gave us enough of us kind of an in-camera standard of things. And then we had exhausted our money. So we had to take a year to try to cut that together and add visual effects into that, because there still was tons of visual effects, and try to raise more money. And we raised enough to keep going a year later, wherein we were able to start adding, we knew what worked and what didn't work, I think, from the first section. And the story, thankfully enough, is segmented. So we were able to kind of pick up these different chapters. And as we went on, which is funny, I mean, the sort of, I guess now, the understanding that we made the movie in a warehouse. The warehouse was like our aspirational dream, because like there was a lot of space in that warehouse, which we had for 3 months, and we got to build all these partial sets, and here's a stoop of a porch, and here's one thing, which seemed like the greatest gift in the world to us at the time, and still is. So yeah, the stuff that has the most visual effects was actually us running almost at our most efficient, which seems somewhat counter, but yeah.
And what about your cast? Because of course, we're going through time. So it's kind of, you had to sort of think of the different actors and actresses you wanted in each portion of the story. So how do you decide who's going to be right for your film, and how did you work with them to achieve your vision?
Well, I love actors, and I am a frustrated actor myself, as you might be able to tell that I'm in part of the movie. So Jordan Monahan, who's in the first section with me, she and I had known each other for a long period of time, and she was like kind of an integral part of putting the film together. And this small group of us that were like, we're going to go make this film. And she had a much larger network of actors that she knew of being, she has been a working actor for some time. So, anytime there was somebody who was just, that she knew kind of was in my wheelhouse of people that I would love, be like, come meet this person, or come see this person do a play. And I would just be like, oh, they're just fantastic. And for example, the 2 people who play the older versions of us were from Jordan. And I saw Josh Clark, who's just incredible, in a play called Picnic in Los Angeles. And I think I saw the play 4 or 5 times. And he just, every time and I think I tried to talk to him, and he just would like run away from me. I'd be like, I'm going to make this movie. I really just, And Christine Kellogg Darren, who plays the older Moira, also someone from Jordan, and she just is just remarkable, but all very different. And then Edmund Kofi, who plays Hayden, who's in the middle of the film, he and I went to college together, and we've known each other for over 10 years, and he's just my favorite actor in the world. And But it's a whole mix of people. Like, for example, Ira, who was played by Yasmin Keshtar, she went to college to study painting with our production designer, Cassandra Baker. And I've known her incidentally for, about 10 years. And she just is sort of one of those stunningly remarkable, unique people, which you sort of are trying to assemble when you make a movie. Like, who are the most extraordinary people I've met? And, I think all the people in the film certainly are. And yeah, it just is. I always think that making movies is like an excuse to get a bunch of people you love together and be like, let's make a thing together about all these things we think about one another. And usually the top of the line for that for me is actors. So I'm a theater kid at heart. Yeah.
And the film kind of teases the audience in a way, in the sense that, it's not giving you all the answers. Everything's very sort of like glimpsed at and kind of lightly touched upon. So there's a lot of gaps to kind of fill in. But what do you think or hope that people take away from watching it? Or what, if you were going to, do you think the film has to say? It feels like there's some themes in there about, being stuck in a place you don't want to be in, and almost this idea of having a dream about a better place, of being a negative thing or a positive thing, because perhaps it can make you want to strive for something better.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like my inner monologue for about 10 years, which is what it is. It is, as I said, it's a series of, mults of changes of me, when you carry, it took 5 years to make, but I spent probably another 6 years before then just having versions of it carried around with me on every desk I had, and whomever's living room I was living in, I would have the scripts with me, and they would always be changing based on whatever I was going through. So it has all these very contradictory ideas in them, which I like. And I think towards the end we decided which ones to clean up and which ones not to. And I think I'll probably change what the movie is about from an outsider's perspective now over time. It's been a year probably since I've seen the film or really even talked about it in any way. So I'm like, forgive me for catching. I'm like, what is the movie about? But it changes depending on the day. But I think it certainly is, my hope for people watching the film is, it certainly is defiantly not about its contents. Like, it certainly is a experience of feeling. And I think there aren't details and there aren't like hand holders of, here's what the political, setup of Withrin is. There's none of that. And it's, I think, supposed to feel like this hot, quick, scary but romantic dream, making images. I think that certainly all the things you said resonate right towards the center to me of what I believe it to be about, but also I don't know. So yeah.
So in that sense, it's kind of, like an impressionistic fable or something, which people can kind of react to. Maybe it's on a different level than something that's too cerebral, like kind of an emotional response.
I mean, when I remember sort of the most important moments of my life, for better or worse, I don't necessarily remember what was going on. You remember sort of pieces of it and little kind of very tactile things. And I kind of was trying to assemble those together, and find some reflection in parents and children, and repeating sort of many dreams caught up together.
And then, so you were saying it was after this that you then started working on The Green Knight, and then also this amazing video for Father John Misty. So maybe you could just briefly tell us a bit about working on that. And I just love this jellyfish.
Thank you. I love the jellyfish. The jellyfish has been a real bright spot for us. So David Lowery and Toby Hallbrooks, and I think between the two of them, they were aware of my movie, and they had a few shots that just weren't finished on The Green Knight, and because of the pandemic, it got pushed. And they were like, "Do you want to try these out?" And I was terrified to try them out. and it worked out well. And then A24 didn't really have a release date set, so Dave and I just kept making more shots, which was just this amazing process. And then the Father John Misty experience was also an incredible strange phone call from my incredible managers saying, do you know who Father John Misty is? And, yes, I know who Father John Misty is. And I listened to his new album and the music that he's making, and we talked about it, and it just was a real instant kinship of we both, I think, have a real fascination with this idea of the modern and stretching the modern out into some weird fable. And I certainly love old Hollywood, and his new album is so wonderful. So it just aligned. I had an idea that was very Wizard of Oz-esque as someone who had years of Wizard of Oz nightmares as a kid. And he was like, the only thing I think about the song is like a jellyfish. And then somehow it turned into a jellyfish is going through this like strange version of these sets. So it's been, both of them have been, a high point of just, I'm working with amazing artists who are just sort of joyous about the things that they're making, which is, what could be better, really. So.
It's like a whole other art form now, isn't it? Rather than like painting or drawing, it's like, visual effects. It's, whatever's in your head, you can make happen.
Right. I mean, I'm someone who just would constantly get kicked out of painting class because I wouldn't do what I was told to do. And I didn't have the discipline to figure out how to actually draw faces and do the breakdowns. And I'd be like, I just want to paint skies and stuff. So it's incredible how little people change because I still am doing that. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm out of time, but it's been so nice to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us, and hope people can get out and see the Wanting Mare and discover it as well. So thanks so much for your time. Thanks,
have a wonderful day. Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks a lot.